Hello, welcome to Lesson 11 of Mastering Java. Here we're going to talk about the do-while loop. It's very similar to the while loop, so if you haven't learned about the while loop, go back to the previous section and learn about that because this is going to look very similar. So if you remember, the way we did the while loop is we said, for instance, let's create a loop variable integer I, and let's set I is equal to 1, and then let's set a while, actually lowercase, while I, let's go inside of here, I is less than or equal to 15. We'll open a curly brace, and then we'll have system.out.println like this. And then we'll say the current loop variable is I. Now, if you remember, we have to take care of the incrementing ourselves. So let's say I is equal to I plus 1, right? So that's what we have. We initialize the variable. We increment the variable inside the loop. Here's the body of the loop, so we're just going to print out this guy. And the loop continues while I is less than or equal to 15. So if we run that, we see exactly what we expect to see. The current loop variable is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 15. The loop stops at 15 because this is a while loop. It only happens while this variable is true according to this condition, while I is less than or equal to 15. Okay, now I want you to be familiar with that, so let me comment it out. This is what we've learned before. Let me comment this entire loop out, just with a series of double hashes like this. And what I would like to do is let me shrink this down a little bit, and let me push this down the page and kind of keep it on the page. Now we're going to talk about a do-while loop, and I want to contrast that to what we've just seen right here. So let me clear the output there. So for a do-while loop, what you have is the keyword do. You see it's in purple there. You open a bracket, hit enter. The closing bracket is entered. Now we still have a loop going on in here. All right, so let's go ahead and put the same stuff inside. System.out.println like this. The do-while loop variable is, and then we'll just print it out so we can see what we're talking about. And again, we have to take care of the incrementing ourselves inside of the loop. All right? But in this case, for a do-while loop, the while keyword comes at the end, like this. And let's just do the same thing to make it easy. I is less than or equal to 15. Right? Now, you would think you'd be done, but if you try to run this, it'll say you have an error. The main difference, one of the main differences between a do-while and a regular while, notice the while, the way we ran it before, there was no semicolon here. We just had while with the condition, then the opening and the closing braces. When you have a do-while, you need to put a semicolon after the while statement. That's what it was complaining about. And you can kind of see that red underline there. So go ahead and put that in place. Let me save it. Let me run it. And let's see, the output is exactly the same, except now it says do-while. The do-while loop variable is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 15. Okay, so you can look at these two guys and you can stare at them all day long, and you might convince yourself, why do they even give you both of these guys in Java? They look like they do exactly the same thing. Well, it is true that the while loop and the do-while loop are almost exactly the same. But there's one difference, and that one difference is the only reason the do-while loop exists. That difference is that if you look at the two different loops here, all right, in both cases we have to initialize our variable outside the loop. In both cases, we have to increment our variable inside the loop. And in both cases, we have brackets and we have body of the loop that we're executing over and over while this condition is true. That's all similarities. The main difference is that for the do-while loop, the way it works is program execution comes down and there's no condition up here. So it does the first part of the loop first, and then it tests for the first condition. And then it goes back and it does it again and again and again. So in other words, these statements here, this print statement and this I++, they will execute at least one time, no matter what the value of I is, guaranteed. All right? Because there's no condition up here. See, in the while loop, the condition check was at the top. So if I was not less than 15, right, let's say I was 25, then the entire loop is just skipped and nothing happens. But in this case, the condition check is at the end of the loop. So what a do-while loop does is it guarantees that that loop is executed at least one time. At least one time. So for instance, if I come up here and I put I is equal to 88, right? For this loop, we know that it would not execute because for the while loop, I is not less than or equal to 15, so we know that this would not execute. Up here, we have exactly the same conditional at the end, but if we run this guy, we can see the do while loop variable is 88. But it doesn't continue any further than that because we come through the loop, we do this stuff first, we increment the variable, then we check, we see that this test fails, so the loop aborts, and then we go and we end the program because there's nothing else there. That is the main difference between a do while loop and a while loop. You might ask yourself, well, how do I know which one I need to do? What it's going to boil down to is when you're programming for real, you're going to need to be looping things a lot. Sometimes a for loop is going to be the easiest way to set it up. Sometimes a while loop might make a little more sense. If you run into a situation when you need that loop to execute at least one time, and potentially more than one time, but you're not sure, but you know that it has to initialize at least once and go through it once, that's when you want your do while to step in there. It guarantees you to flow at least once through the program. So that's the bottom line with do while loop. I'm mostly trying to teach you the syntax. I'm trying to teach you what it does and how it works, and so that you can get a vibe and a feel for how a do while is set up differently than a while loop. Also, the semicolon at the end after the while statement is another difference between the two. What I'd like you to do now is go off to my example exercise I have, read that, and try to do that yourself. I've got a really cool exercise set up that's going to give you practice using do whiles. It's going to give you a practice reading the keyboard and comparisons with if statements and lots of cool things. So it's stuff that's going to give you a lot of practice. So go off to do that now, do it yourself, and then see if you can use that do while in that exercise to get the output to match exactly what I'm asking for there.